Aloha and good morning. Welcome to a hearing of the House Committee on Water and Land. Here we are in the Capitol in room 430. It is Thursday, February 17th at 8:30 a.m. Thank you for joining us. We're having this hearing also by video conference, and we welcome everybody who is here to testify today on the measures before us. Just to make sure that everyone has a chance to testify, I'd like you to, if possible, limit your testimony to 2 minutes, and I'll ask you to wrap up if you go past that. We do need to be finished by noon because we have our regular House session. So if we get cramped for time, I'll ask you to summarize so we can get finished in time. Please, if you're testifying, please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. If you're having any technical issues, you can use the chat function to communicate with our technical staff here, but only use the chat function for that purpose because I'm not reading it. I'm trying to keep track of the hearing itself. Let's see, if you're disconnected unexpectedly, just try to rejoin. If you disconnected during your testimony, come on back in as soon as you can, and I'll try to make time so that you can complete your testimony. But we really don't have any responsibility for bad internet connections on your end, so we'll do the best we can. In the event that our network fails and we need to reschedule, I will make sure we can post notice for our next hearing date. And if you would all please conduct yourself with our tradition of aloha and courtesy for each other, everything will work out just fine. Thank you very much again for being here today to testify. We always do a better job when we get testimony from the public and agencies. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Members, to the top of the agenda, House Bill 2059 relating to flood mitigation. On this measure, we have testimony in opposition from DLNR. We have Carty Chang. Mr. Chang, good to see you, sir. Please proceed.
Aloha, good morning, Chair Tarnis, Vice Chair Bronco, and members. On behalf of Suzanne Case, Carty Chang, Chief Engineer for the Division of Engineering. Yes, we respectfully oppose this measure, and I do want to clarify our position. Our opposition is purely based on being designated as the expending agency for all but one project, and not necessarily on the intent of the measure. And I'll articulate our reasons for opposition in all fairness to the committee. First of all, DLNR has no land interest in Makaha Valley. The majority of the lands are privately owned. Much of the upper watershed, about 2,700 acres, is under the city board of water supply, and the city and county has jurisdiction of some of the roadways within the valley. Whenever you propose improvements on private property, it raises the concern of utilizing public funds for private benefit. The estimated costs of these improvements are totaling over $100 million based on 2014 costs. And if you escalate that today, that's going to be even more expensive. The bill does not include any funding for maintenance. Whenever you build structures like these, you need maintenance funds in perpetuity to maintain the structures. As we noted in our testimony, the counties do have the authority to implement flood projects under 46(1.5) Hawaii Revised Statutes, and explicitly it says to construct and enforce maintenance of projects for the control and protection against floods and flood waters. The counties also have the authority to regulate development in the floodplain, as well as require large developers to implement flood projects into their development plans. DLNR's mission does not include the implementation or maintenance of flood improvements. And if the legislature does decide to move this measure forward, we recommend revising the expending agency from DLNR to a more appropriate agency to take on these improvements. I'm available for questions, and I have staff available as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carty. Next, we have a written testimony with comments from the Department of Budget and Finance. Members, please refer to that written testimony. And we have received testimony with comments from the Department of Transportation. Do we have someone here from the Department of Transportation to testify today? I don't see anyone at this time. So members, I refer you to their written testimony that is included in your packet. Members, that's all the testimony we have received on this measure. Any questions for Mr. Carty Chang from DLNR? Representative Morikawa, please proceed.
Hi, Cardi. Good to see you, although not in
Morning.
person. How did we handle the Hanalei River mitigation? Is that different from what is being proposed in this bill?
Yeah, the Hanalei, if I recall, we built a levee on state land that prevented the water from moving into private property. But the improvements were based on a state unencumbered lands. If you recall that project we did have control over that land when
I
we
see.
did that
I
levy.
got that. Okay. And then I didn't read the bill completely, but does this kind of fall into what we're going through in Waimea Valley? With the landslide? It was kind of.
Yeah,
flood
well,
related.
I think the Waimea, are you talking about Menehune Road, the one that just
Yeah.
recently?
Yes.
And Menehune Road, that's a little bit different issue because that the area that I think the rockfall hazard exists on is basically in a natural condition. So the department takes a little different approach when we start to alter a natural condition. When you start altering natural condition, it creates an exposure for the state that may create additional liability in the future. Because once you touch a natural hillside where you start to mitigate rockfall hazards, it becomes a liability issue for the state. So we didn't believe we needed to do any more rockfall mitigation along Menehune Road in that particular area that there was that recent landslide.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up. That's very important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions for Mr. Chang? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Chang. Let's move on to the next measure.
Thank you.
House Bill 1989 relating to the Hawaii Youth Conservation Corps. First up, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii State Energy Office. Is Mr. Scott Glenn or someone from the Hawaii Energy Office here today? I guess not. So members, I refer you to their testimony in support. Next, we have testimony and support from DLNR. Mary Gotzol, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tanis, Vice Chair Bronco, and committee members. Mary Gotzol from the Department of Land and Natural Resources. The department supports this bill and stands on its testimony, and Leah Laramie and I are here for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, we have received testimony with comments from the Department of Budget and Finance, testimony and support from Hawaii Thousand Friends, Kua'aina Ulu Amo, also from individuals Carissa Cabrera, and from Kupu, John Leong. Mr. Leong, are you here today to testify? Please proceed.
Aloha. Good morning, Chair Tarnas and Vice Chair Bronco and committee members. Thank you so much for hearing this bill today. We stand on a written testimony and strong support, and we had the opportunity to work with this program in a previous version under the Department of Business and Economic Development in 2020 with the CARES funded version. And just in 3 months, we saw a really impactful program that helped to employ hundreds of individuals and provide over 90,000 hours of work and over $6.5 million worth of benefits from socioeconomic benefits, which is more than double the cost of the program. Last year, thanks to the legislature's strong support of HB 1176, the program was put together under DLNR's watch, and they've done a wonderful job administering it. We were again allowed the opportunity to support this program. And earlier this year, we had a really strong start with over 130 positions provided statewide, about half of them on Oahu, half of them on neighbor islands. And the results have been really amazing from the recruitment side. For the 130 positions, we had over 250% more applicants than we had positions available for. On the employer side, we had about 300 position requests, and we were able to provide positions to about 89 different employers in the green job sector, which related to conservation, natural resource management, agriculture, and other clean energy areas, which are so important to the growth of our state. So we're really seeing a strong demand, especially in a season where we're seeing employers having a harder time finding people wanting to work. We're seeing a huge in the industry, and this has been a really great program, helping both our environment, our economy, and our future leaders as well too. I'm here for any questions that you may have, and thank you very much again for hearing this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Leong. Members, we have written testimony in support from Ron Weidenbach with Hawaii Fish Company, Anthony Ching with the Nature Conservancy of Hawaii, Quinn Vittum from Reuse Hawaii, and 2 individuals, Kirsten Afuso and Sherry Pollock. That's all the testimony we received on this measure. Members, any questions for our testifiers today? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much to our testifiers. Next, we have House Bill 2006 relating to permits. This requires for emergency permits to install sandbags that an attachment to the sandbags with identifying information, including the permittee's name and permit number, must be on the sandbag. On this measure, we have testimony with comments from DLNR. Mr. Michael Kane, please proceed.
Okay, good morning, Chair, committee members. Michael Kane, Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands. On behalf of DLNR, we offered comments. I would like to offer the committee a quick update. Since we submitted comments, I was able to consult with our coastal engineers. We'd expressed concern that the tags would create more debris. It will be possible for them to sew the tags into the bag so that they don't break loose under high surf. And one more annotation. I think our department can do this as policy. We can make the decision to make this a requirement of any permits we issue. And we could start doing that immediately, or the next time that we have a permit for a sandbag in front of us. And I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. I appreciate that. Members, that's all the testimony we received on this measure. Any questions for DLNR? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much, Mr. Kane. Next, we have House Bill 2147 relating to municipal solid waste landfill permits, reinstates the Department of Health authority to permit federal municipal solid waste landfills. On this measure, we have testimony in support from the Department of Health. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, and committee members. Glenn Hawai'i, Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch on behalf of the Department of Health. The department stands on its written testimony in support and thanks the committee for consideration of this measure. We're available for any questions you have.
Thank you very much. We have received written testimony in support from the Hawaii County Department of Environmental Management, Ramsey Mansour. Members, that's all the testimony we've received on this measure. Any questions for Department of Health? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. Next, on to another Department of Health measure. This is HB 2148 relating to water pollution control. And on this measure, we have testimony in support from the Department of Health. Again, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Alec Wong, Chief of the Clean Water Branch, testify on behalf of the Department of Health. The Department of Health stands on its written testimony in support. We are available to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, that's all the testimony we've received on this measure. Any questions for our testifier from the Department of Health? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much, sir. Next bill, House Bill 2134, relating to counties. On this measure, we have testimony in support from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Do we have a representative from DHHL here today? Yes, we have Chair Ayala. Please proceed.
Hello, good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. We do stand in strong support of this bill and have been working with many of the counties, and that's reflected in the amendments to the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've also received testimony with comments from the Board of Water Supply. Ms. Kathleen Mitchell, please proceed.
Yes, aloha, Chair Thomas and Vice Chair Bronco. Kathy Mitchell, the Board of Water Supply. We stand on our testimony, offering comments.
Thank you very much. Members, that's all the testimony we received on this measure. Any questions for our testifiers? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much to our testifiers. Next, House Bill 1954, making an emergency appropriation to fund a grant to the Board of Water Supply for emergency operations, future planning, and groundwater remediation. On this measure, we have written testimony with comments from the Department of Budget and Finance. We have testimony with comments from the State Department of Health. The representative from the Department of Health wishing to testify on this measure, you may proceed. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Lene Ichinotsugu on behalf of the Department of Health. The department stands on our written testimony providing comments. I'll be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from Dlnr Commission on Water Resource Management. Please proceed, Neil.
Yes, good morning, Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Bronco, committee members, Neil Fuji with the Commission on Water Resource Management, DLNR. Stand on our written testimony with comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from the Board of Water Supply. Kathy Mitchell, please proceed.
Yes, Chair Thomas, we stand on our testimony in strong support of this measure and available for questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from Rebecca Villejas, from Sherry Pollock of 350 Hawaii, Melody Aduha from Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Testimony in support from Dave Mullinex, Our Revolution Hawaii. Mr. Mullinex, are you available? Please proceed.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Please proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, on behalf of our 5,000 member supporters, we strongly support this measure. I think it's very important because the Board of Water Supply has been the only organization or agency for the last 8 years who's consistently and continually worked for our best interest to protect our water. And they say they need this funding, and I think that that they should provide it to them, because we know that they know what needs to be done and they know how to do it, and they've had a plan to protect our water from the beginning, and we need to completely support them in every way we can. The Board of Water Supply is heroes to all the community, and we just thank them very much for their efforts, and thank you all for hearing this testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Susan Piccola Davis. Please proceed.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We hear you fine. Please proceed.
Thank you. I've been following all the bills on Red Hill, and I just want to say, first off, any money being put towards this catastrophe, it's a worst case scenario waiting to happen. We cannot afford to be in a reactive state. To be proactive, the state must address the dangerous island aquifer. There are many misconceptions about that's it. As Board of Water Supply. In the testimony of there is unencumbered cash balance of 1.3 million in the leaking underground storage tank fund, of which during Senate Bill 658 yesterday, Senator Department of Health about it as a way to provide a Oahu Board of Water Supply with funds to cover the recurrent expenditure regarding Red Hill. Basically, they asked for the reason they're still in 2.4 million, but they still will not transfer in money if we got that board water supply. Yes. They need a cushion for ongoing expenses or that may occur with other underground tanks. I find that disrespectful of the taxpayers' money. On top of that, I feel that regardless of what department you're in, everybody needs to be contributing to this disaster. The Department of Health has an opportunity to seek full reimbursement. However, what they indicate is that reimbursement doesn't always come quickly. No, it doesn't. The government moves slow. We all know that. It's, part of being the government. So the passing of this bill should not rest on the Department's of Health's issue with the already encumbered expenses, being that they had $400,000 in the account and now they've expended $300,000. They got $100,000 balance. But still, what they're not sharing is the unencumbered cash balance of $1.3 million.
Thank you very much. If you could begin to summarize, that would be great.
Yes. My summary is that it doesn't matter where the money comes from. It has to be taken care of. Somebody needs to tell somebody to spend their money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, I know some of the audio was a little choppy, but I refer you to Ms. Davis's written testimony so that you can see her comments there as well. So Ms. Davis, we understood you, but it was choppy. The audio was a little choppy.
I'm sorry.
But we did hear most of your testimony, and we do have your written testimony. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have testimony in support from Colonel Ann Wright. And I refer you to her written testimony. And we have testimony in support from Patricia Blair. Members, that's all the testimony that we have received on this measure. Any questions for our testifiers? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Representative Kobayashi, please proceed.
For Board of Water Supply or Department of Health, has the board requested any funding and how much?
Representative, are you asking the Board of Water Supply that question?
Yes.
We are incurring costs and we are planning to look for alternative water supply and considering exploratory wells. So that's a cost.
No. Have you requested monies? And if so, how much?
We have not requested monies from the Department of Health yet.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Representative?
No.
Thank you very much. Members, any other questions for our testifiers? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much to our testifiers. Appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today. Next, we have House Bill 1751. If I could ask Ms. Davis for you to mute your, thank you, that would be great. We're just getting some background noise. Appreciate it very much, thank you. Next, we're moving on to House Bill 1751, relating to rural districts. On this measure, we have testimony with comments from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Morning, Chair Tarnas and members.
Yes, Rodney Funakoshi, please proceed.
Morning, Chair Tarnas and members, Rodney Funakoshi. OPSD stands on its written testimony offering comments, but preferring HB 1929, which involves a study of the rural district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from the Department of Agriculture.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas.
Morris Atta, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Tarnas and committee members. Like the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, we stand on our testimony, providing comments and concern regarding the county planning process, and prefer measure present the options presented in HB 1829. Thank you.
I think you mean 1929, but that's, I know you mentioned 1829 in your testimony, but it's actually 1929.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that correction. I appreciate
No
it.
worries, no worries. That's, we are moving forward that bill, and I appreciate your suggestion, as OPSD has said, that is a better vehicle to address this issue.
Yeah.
Next, we have testimony from Hawaii Realtors in support, and testimony from the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii with comments. Members, that's all the testimony we've received on this measure. Any questions for our testifiers?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, Vice Chair Bronco, please proceed.
This is for Mr. Funakoshi. In your folks' testimony, you write that this measure may exacerbate unintended residential sprawl in the rural district. If you can expand upon that, please.
Yes, the rural district currently allows one dwelling per half acre. A quarter acre would double that density, but would also mean basically a 10,000 square foot lot would be allowed in the rural district. Which could be rural-like, but it could also exacerbate urban sprawl or rural sprawl. We would more consider it. So that is the concern, which is why we prefer a more comprehensive study to ensure rural district lifestyles and so forth are preserved.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Representative Kobayashi.
For Office of Planning, my understanding of rural districts is that rural has kind of changed in some areas of the island, particularly Oahu, where there has been growth over decades, definitely. So I think this might apply to some parts of some rural districts, but perhaps not to all rural districts. Any comment?
Yes, there is no rural district state zoning on Oahu.
Oh, I see.
The city has a country zoning, which is similar, but is not the rural district on the state level. Most of it is on neighbor islands, mostly on Maui.
And the country district on Oahu is what designation under the state classification?
I believe it's urban. I'm not sure. I would have to double check and get back to you, but
it's urban zoned by LUC, Land Use Commission.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm not certain of that. I would probably have to double check. And
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? I do have a question. Rodney, maybe you're the one to ask about it. In doing some research on this, I note that in HRS 46-4(c), it says that each county may adopt reasonable standards to allow the construction of 2 single-family dwelling units on any lot where a residential dwelling unit is permitted. Now, I understand that this is usually used to allow for ohana dwelling units in land in the urban district, the state urban district. However, the way it's written, it seems like it could be used by the counties to allow an additional dwelling unit in both rural and agricultural districts. Do you have any comment about that?
Yes, which is also why we would prefer that the density not be increased.
But am I reading that correctly, that that provision in statute does allow counties to add an additional dwelling unit if one's already permitted?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you very much. Any other questions for our testifiers today? Seeing none, let's move on. Thank you to our testifiers. Next, we have HB 1993 relating to agricultural leases. First up, we have the Department of Agriculture. we have Mr. Morris Atta with us. Please proceed, Morris.
Good morning, Chair, committee members. The department will stand on its testimony, written testimony, but we do want to express, we do have strong concerns about the impact on our leasing procedures for the department. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the University of Hawaii. Mr. Walter Bowen, please proceed.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. Walter Bowen, Associate Dean for Research, on behalf of the University of Hawaii. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill with some concerns that were addressed in our written testimony. And I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have written testimony with comments from the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. And we have testimony in opposition from the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Mr. Brian Miyamoto, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Bronco, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll respectfully stand on our testimony in opposition. We laid out some of our concerns. I think the department and UH share the same concerns. We do understand and we do support new farmers being provided state land, DOA leases, and that's why we do advocate for expansion of the Ag Park program. And also we are proponents of transferring lands from Dlnr over to DOA. We would like to see more agricultural lands available for small farmers, but we want to be able to retain those farmers that have track records and some that do have succession plans, which we're extremely happy about, continue to be able to farm on their state leases. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Mr. Miyamoto. Next, we have testimony and support from Elise Nielsen with the Kihei Poultry LLC. Ms. Nielsen, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair and members. My name is Elise Nielsen, owner of Kihei Poultry, and this is in support of HB 1993. The Chair and members should all have a copy of my written testimony.
We do. Thank you.
Yesterday, during the Senate meeting for the companion bill SB 3011, the DOA expressed that their opposition to the bill is based on the fact that they don't agree with shortening the length of the leases because they support agricultural activities. And they support new and existing farmers. While opposing the bill in entirety really helps no one, and it doesn't go towards the fulfillment of Act 90 from 2003. It's already been 19 years in waiting to fulfill that. In that time, new farmers have been unable to even start operating at a meaningful scale, and existing farmers have been stunted or gone out of business altogether because of lack of affordable land. I propose to amend the bill by adding 2 stipulations, in addition to the amendments mentioned in my written testimony. 1, prioritize extending leases to those actively practicing agricultural practices, such as current and established farmers and ranchers, as long as the lessee still meets qualifying standards. And 2, if the lessee has a family-operated farm or ranch, allow a qualified successor to be added as a co-lessee with the option to take over the lease when appropriate, based on the original lessee's ability to continue the farm or ranch operation. Further, HRS 171-10 confirms the DLNR's classification of pastureland use allowance of animals, with no exclusion of poultry or pigs mentioned. HRS 166-3 states agricultural activities is not only allowable, but the intended and required use of the land. And HRS 166E-2 defines the agricultural activities means the care and production of livestock, livestock products, poultry, and poultry products. HRS 205-4.6 simply states private restrictions on agricultural uses and activities is not allowed. So that kind of clarifies the exclusion of pigs and poultry from allowable livestock on state-owned land is not really lawful. There's already laws in place that display this, and that acknowledging that will open up a lot of ways that we can be in alignment with the state constitution regarding promoting diversified agriculture. This bill specifically affects not only the support of small farmers and ranchers, but all those in the community that we as farmers and ranchers could be feeding if we had the support of the state. But words alone accomplish nothing. Action is involved to support agricultural activities. And I believe that this bill will create action to continue things moving forward. Thank you so much, and I'm available if anyone has questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nielsen. And members, we have received written testimony and support from Melody Aduha, Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Members, that is all the testimony we received on this measure. Any questions for our testifiers?
If I may.
Vice Chair Bronco, please proceed.
For Hawaii Farm Bureau,
Yes, Vice Chair.
hi, Mr. Miyamoto. I wanted to ask if this bill causes more harm than what's the intention. I'm just worried that it's going to disincentivize farmers on Department of Agricultural land.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and gladly answer questions, but also would like to defer to Department of Agriculture, and they articulated a lot of our concerns also within their testimony. Again, we support the intent. If the intent is to get more new farmers or more farmers on DOA leases, then let's look at expanding the ag park system. And we have, the Farm Bureau has in the past supported the state purchasing more agricultural lands instead of having those lands quite possibly developed. We think the state has an interest in production agriculture versus development. The provision that limits the leases or shortens the lease term from 65 to 35, again, could be a disincentive. Farming is a long-term process and takes long-range planning. So limiting it to 35 years and then also reducing the extension, again, farmers may not be able to or want to invest in their operations because of the short term of these leases. Something that we did think about, again, there are some concerns that we see in the bill about the lands not being used or being reclaimed for appropriate agriculture. Maybe a periodic review, but we do believe that the DOA already has the rules, the staff, the research investigation recommendations that they use for the Board of Ag to ensure that these leases aren't misused. So again, putting in some of these provisions really could, again, impact our farmers' ability. You heard the last testifier about meeting our double food production goals. Again, without long-term leases, farmers, they're going to be discouraged from bidding for new leases. And long-term leases, the succession plans, I mean, they're moot without being able to extend for a reasonable amount of time where they can continue to make investments. So again, I think the department, we stand with the department on their concerns. Maybe a periodic review, but we think there are processes and mechanisms in place that can support our current farmers with the current lease process. But also let's look at expanding the Ag Park program and expanding Department of Agriculture's resources so that we can encourage and we can get more of these new farmers who are looking for some of the state lands. Again, the highest and best use, again, the discretion of the department, again, their mission is to support agriculture, not necessarily generate the most revenue from these lands. So the department has a mission to support farmers and ranchers, and we believe that they have the mechanisms and the expertise to do that with their lease making procedure that they have in place right now.
Thank you, Mr. Miyamoto. Chair, if I may ask another question?
Certainly, proceed.
To Mr. Atta from the Department of Agriculture.
Sure, yeah.
Same line of questioning. Do you believe that this measure will not encourage farmers on Department of Agricultural land? Excuse me.
Ryan, from Hawaii Farm Bureau expressed some of our concerns very eloquently and really addressed the core of the concern is that we do believe it could act as a disincentive to the farmers, not only, because it doesn't create the most optimum conditions for investing monies into their operations and to maintain their operations for the long term. I think the way Brian explained it is, clearly the situation we're contemplating. And oftentimes, farmers don't have a whole lot of money, so they need financing to put in these really costly improvements, and seeking that financing requires the ability to collateralize those loans. And many financial institutions will not, accept short-term leases as sufficient collateral for these kinds of loans. So that's where, a lot of the disincentive to invest, funds for continued and future operations really, becomes an issue. We're also concerned about this measure in that it creates a disincentive from the onset of bidding for leases if there is a threat or a concern that those leases could be essentially taken away from them anytime they even consider the option of asking for an extension or seeking to transfer the lease to a family member, or if for reasons of their inability to continue to try and sell the business and transfer the lease as part of their assets. So these types of concerns are very real economic, financial concerns for farmers, pretty much living, very close to the edge oftentimes. So that's where we believe, and we have concerns about the incentive, the disincentive nature of some of these changes. We're also concerned about interference with existing lessees' vested real property rights in their leases. If you introduce a potential for taking that lease away from them, without that it runs contrary to the existing language of the lease itself.
Thank you, Mr. Octo.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Members, other questions for our testifiers? Representative Kobayashi.
For Department of Ag, my understanding was that part of this bill came about because there was an instance where someone would have profited by about $1 million with the transfer or the extension of a lease. Is that correct? And can you tell us why this was allowed?
Yeah,
how you would stop such a, shall we say, transaction?
The department, well, we believe that that was based on a misperception, because I know part of the concerns that were raised by the community is, why is this person proposing to get $1 million for the sale of his business, which included the transfer of this lease? And there's been, characterizations that, it's the value of the business was just the lease versus this is actually a sale of a business that includes the lease and whatever other business assets that were involved. Every lease assignment, when it involves, a transfer like this, goes through a premium recapture analysis to analyze the transaction itself to see if there's any profit being realized by the transfer of the lease. And so we did go through that process, but people disagree, with the analysis, and felt as if the $1 million price tag was associated only with the lease, whereas, at my knowledge, that was not the case. But the perception is bad, and because of that, I believe the board actually rejected or denied the assignment because of public commentary. But that is the process that we go through to analyze whether or not these types of abuses, where windfalls are being received by leaseholders or could be received by leaseholders, are scrutinized.
But in your analysis, as I understand it, you do not ask for information on IRS agricultural income.
I would need to ask my ag resource person whether or not we do in fact, because I do know the analysis is pretty significant in trying to scrutinize what exactly is the value attributed to the transfer of the lease versus what is actual net profit that's being realized. Because when we do a premium recapture analysis, the intent is if it's just a dollar for dollar value for the lease, we don't participate in that. Whatever is the net profit of the transaction is where we apply our formula to determine whether or not the state should be participating in that profit. I don't have exact information whether or not in fact the tax returns for ag income is considered. I would need to ask Brian Cowell to come forward and confirm or dispute that. But I do know we go through a pretty vigorous review of the transaction for that exact purpose.
Okay, thank you. I am shocked you don't know what is required, what information is required. I mean, the point here is that IRS specifically has a category to report income from agricultural purposes. And if you're not using that, then this kind of shenanigans about transferring businesses can continue.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any other questions for our testifiers? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you very much to our testifiers on that measure. Next, we go to the final measure on our agenda, House Bill 2084, relating to important agricultural lands. First up, we have testimony and support from the Department of Business and Economic Development, Tourism, Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Rodney Funakoshi, please proceed.
I'll be testifying for both DBBT Director as well as the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. And OP stands in support and strong support of this measure, which we believe will correct some problems with the current IL incentive provision in 205. So
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Department of Agriculture. Mr. Morris Atta, please proceed.
Morning, Chair, committee members. The department will stand on its written testimony and support, offering an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony, written testimony with comments from the City and County of Honolulu Department of Planning and Permitting. Please refer to that testimony, members. Next, we have testimony and support from the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Mr. Brian Miyamoto, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on a written testimony in support.
Thank you very much. And next, members, we have testimony, written testimony in support from Drew Wilkinson, and also written testimony in support from the Maui Chamber of Commerce President Pamela Tumpa. Members, that's all the testimony we have received on this measure. Does anyone have questions for our testifiers? Seeing none, I want to thank the testifiers for all their testimony today on these measures. And members, I would like to move directly into decision making. Back up to the top of the agenda. HB 2059. Members, I checked in with the introducer of this measure, discussed it, saying that these are not state lands, and my preference is to defer this measure. I understand the Senate companion is moving, that's Senate Bill 3188. It changed it to tell the city that they need to deal with this issue. If that bill moves over from the Senate, then we can consider hearing that measure. But in the meantime, my recommendation is to defer House Bill 2059, since there are no state lands above that are actually causing the trouble. Any discussion, members? Seeing none, thanks. We'll move on. House Bill 1989. On this measure,
Could you take a vote? Speak, Chair.
You don't take a vote on a deferral.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm recommending deferring HB 2059.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate making sure that I do things properly. Next, House Bill 1989 relating to the Hawaii Youth Conservation Corps. While we received a lot of very supportive testimony to this, our staff analyst and bill writer and attorney suggested that we might want to slightly modify where we put what language we include in here. So I asked the introducer, Vice Chair Bronco, to look at that. So my recommendation is to pass out a House Draft 1, defect the effective date to July 1, 2050, make some technical amendments, and I will ask Chair Bronco to describe the amendments that he would like to make to the bill. Vice Chair Bronco.
Thank you, Chair. We'll be deleting Section 2, Subpoint 4. We'll be adding in Section 2, Subpoint 3, basically designating DLNR to administer and enter an agreement for the program, as well as asking the program to prioritize economic diversification and participants who are 38 years of age or younger. With those changes, Section 2, Subpoint 3 becomes Subpoint 4. Thank you.
Members, I've distributed to you the copy of what we're proposing to do to produce this HD1. Any discussion? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote. HB 1989 with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1989 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Gannon.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Ono. Aye. Representative McDermott is excused. The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Next, members, on to House Bill 2006 relating to permits. I want to thank DLNR for their further discussion on this with their engineers, seeing that an identifying tag on these sandbags could in fact be done in a manner that won't contribute to marine debris. That's very useful. So what I'm proposing to do is move this forward with an HD1 by defecting the effective date to July 1, 2050. And that's the only change to make in this measure. Members, any discussion? Representative Kobayashi.
I'm wondering if there should be a definition for sandbags.
You know, I'll look into this, and if we have something to suggest, I'll suggest it to the next committee, because I don't have that at hand.
Okay, I mean, there are burrito sandbags that are 10 feet long and I don't know how big. And then there are sandbags that are, 24 inches long.
Well, I think the only sandbags to which this would refer are those that are part of an emergency permit provided by DLNR. So I think DLNR will actually be determining which of the sandbags would require this tag. So it wouldn't just be any sandbag that people put in their doorstop to prevent flooding. Any other discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote. HB 2006 with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 2006 with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott for this measure and all future measures. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Next, on to House Bill 2147, House Draft 1. My recommendation is to pass as is. This is a Department of Health measure It's already been through the first committee, Energy and Environmental Protection. I'm comfortable with it the way it is. It's got a clean date. I'm okay with moving it forward. My recommendation is to pass it as is. Any discussion? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote. HB 2147 as is.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 2147 as is. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
You said McDermott's excused for all measures.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, on to the next measure, HB 2148, relating to water pollution control. Again, this is a administration measure requested by the Department of Health. I feel very comfortable with this. HD1, as it emerged from the previous committee, my recommendation is to pass as is, unamended. Discussion, members. Rep. Kobayashi.
Maybe future committee should look at the title. I believe the title covers part, but not, or the reverse. Contents of the bill go beyond water pollution control.
Okay, I will look at that and see if it merits to be included in the committee report, or I might just have a conversation with the Judiciary Chair. I'll take a look at that. Thank you, Representative Kobayashi. Any other discussion, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote. HB 2148 unamended.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 2148 as is. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. Next on to House Bill 2134 HD1 relating to counties. This already has a defective effective date. My recommendation is to pass it as is. Discussion, members. Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote. HB 2134 HD1 unamended.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 2134 unamended. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Next, we have House Bill 1954 HD1, making an emergency appropriation to fund a grant to the Board of Water Supply for emergency operations, future planning, and groundwater remediation. Members, this already has a defective date, so I propose to amend this so to be an HD2 by incorporating the Department of Health's amendments as recommended in their testimony. I checked with the previous chair and they're okay with that. And it basically, instead of taking money out of the fund, it has an appropriation into the fund because that as Department of Health requested. Members, any discussion?
Chair.
Yes, Representative Ganadin.
This draft bill comes from the Red Hill Committee on which I sit. The news tends to change every few days regarding Red Hill. Just last week, we were notified that $100 million was secured by Senator Schatz. There was a very public discussion here at the legislature by Federal Representative Kai Kahele and Case about their intention to shut down the Red Hill facility. I think that this one needs to be passed through in the instance that urban Honolulu faces major water shortages. So we are now facing around negative 24 to 25% of our water usage here in Greater Honolulu. So the Board of Water Supply has shuttered the Halava shaft as well as Aiea well and Aiea shaft out of diligence. So we're not sure if the Board of Water Supply is going to be issuing a moratorium on new water permits, which would significantly affect our economy. So my thanks to the chair and to members for passing this out.
Thank you very much, Representative, and we all appreciate your advocacy to make sure that the state addresses this issue by ensuring that the Navy complies with our emergency order. And we will move this bill forward taking the Department of Health's amendments and producing an HD2. Any further discussion, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote, HB 1954 HD1 with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1954 with amendments. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Next, on to House Bill 1751. This is an important discussion, and while I do prefer House Bill 1929, which this committee has moved on, and I think does provide a more comprehensive approach to addressing this issue, I would like to move this forward and continue this discussion. My recommendation is to move it forward with House Draft 2, defecting the effective date to July 1, 2050. And let's continue this discussion about a greater use of the rural district, and that rural district would be allowed to have up to one dwelling per quarter acre. This may already be allowed under current statute, but I think that this is an important discussion to move forward. So my recommendation would be an HD2, defecting the effective date to July 1, 2050. Members, any discussion?
Chair.
Vice Chair Bronco.
Chair, I'll be voting WR on this one. I just have some concerns about the unintended consequences of urban sprawl with this measure.
Understood. We do need to protect against urban sprawl. Any other comments, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, HB 1751 HD1 with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1751 with amendments. Noting the reservations of Representative Bronco, is there any further reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Next, on to House Bill 1993 relating to agricultural leases. This is a very good discussion. I appreciate that. And this is following another discussion about it in the Agriculture Committee. The introducer of the bill has worked with to come up with amendments that would address the concerns brought up by the Department of Agriculture and the Hawaii Farm Bureau, as well as farmers that have testified on this, and as well as the Attorney General office. So I have sent out to you members what we are recommending. Basically, the changes would clarify the new rules apply only to new leases, as current lessees have already made decisions based on the rules in effect when they sign that lease. It would eliminate references to a standard of productivity, which would need to be defined and is threatening to farmers. It would increase the flexibility in the lease terms by having one total of 50 years rather than an original lease of 35 and an extension of 15. Farmers could choose when to seek extensions in order to do so at a time that meets their needs for financing. And it would maintain the current closed bid system that allows DOA the discretion in their choices and prevents an attempt to outbid. It's an outcome we care about, is the quality of the farmer, not the price paid. So this maintains the intent of the bill, which is to introduce competition into transfers and leases, so DOA has the opportunity to pick a better farmer if the lessee is not productive. But the lessee will have advantages in the competition due to existing experience, branding, business contracts, etc. So members, I have shared with you the recommended amendments, and we would defect the effective date to July 1, 2050 as well to continue discussion on this. Members, any discussion, comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote. House Bill 1993 HD1 with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 1993 with amendments. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you. On to our final bill on the agenda, House Bill 2084 HD1 relating to important agricultural lands. This is an important measure to move forward, but I would like to adopt the amendments as recommended by the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, also the amendments by the Department of Agriculture, and the amendments offered by the City and County of Honolulu, and make some additional technical amendments. It already has a defective effective date. I think this will improve the bill going forward and help to address this issue, which has beleaguered the IAL process that we are experiencing right now. Members, any discussion? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, HB 2084 HD1 with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill number 2084 with amendments. Is there any reservations? Any no votes? The measure passes.
Thank you very much. Members, that's all of the measures that we have before us today on our agenda. With that, our meeting is adjourned.